Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. We have some breaking news at UFC 285. We are getting an amazing lightweight matchup, Mateusz Gamrot versus Jalin Turner, and this is only a couple weeks away. At UFC 285, we were originally supposed to get Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker pulled out last week. They were looking for a replacement opponent. And now we are getting Jalin Turner versus Mateusz Gamrot. This is going to be my reaction, and towards the end of the video, I'm going to give you an early prediction for this fight. And then in a couple weeks, the week of the fight, the week of UFC 285, I will do a full breakdown and prediction for this fight. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss that. So first off, my initial reaction, Jalin Turner dodged a bullet here. He is lucky that Dan Hooker pulled out. Because had Dan Hooker not pulled out, Dan Hooker would have got smashed by Jalin Turner, and then afterwards, Dan Hooker would have tweeted out that Jalin Turner used an IV in the lead up to the fight, and everyone would have been calling Jalin Turner a cheater. Everyone would have been calling Jalin Turner a weight bully, more of a weight bully than they already call him. So Jalin Turner kind of dodged a bullet here, because I could totally see Dan Hooker losing to Jalin Turner, and then, afterwards, making up claims with no actual evidence to support those claims. But I am super hyped for this fight. I think UFC 285 is better for this matchup. I am far more excited for Jalin Turner versus Mateusz Gamrot than I was for Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker. Jalin Turner versus Dan Hooker is a great matchup. Don't get me wrong. I was looking forward to it. But Jalin Turner's this surging lightweight contender who's on, a 5-fight win streak. And Dan Hooker, I know he won his last fight, but let's be honest. Let's be real about Dan Hooker's UFC career. He's got one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel, He's lucky that he got matched up with Claudio Puelles, who in his last fight at UFC 281, he tried to fight Dan Hooker by just dragging his ass on the canvas like a dog drags his ass on the carpet, to be honest. So Dan Hooker got to win there. But outside of that, Dan Hooker has lost 4 out of his last 6. He got stopped by Arnold Allen back in March of 2022. The fight before that, he got mauled by Islam Makhachev. He has a win over Nasrat Haqparast. What does that really mean? The fight before that got TKO'd by Michael Chandler. And the fight before that, potentially the fight that took his soul, one of the best fights I've ever seen against Dustin Poirier, he lost via unanimous decision. And for me, I felt like the UFC was attempting to build Jalin Turner's name off Dan Hooker's name, an established veteran in the sport. But now Dan Hooker pulls out. Dan Hooker's really the guy that dodged a bullet here, because I think he would have got smashed by Jalin Turner. I think Jalin Turner probably would have hurt him on the feet and then submitted him. But now Dan Hooker pulls out. I think he broke his hand or broke his wrist, something along those lines. And now we get an even better fight, because Mateusz Gamrot versus Jalin Turner is a phenomenal matchup. I only have one complaint about it. I'll talk about that in a second. But you have Mateusz Gamrot. He lost his last fight, but it's against Beneil Dariush, arguably the #1 contender in the lightweight division, and the person who I think should be fighting Islam Makhachev for the lightweight title next. So there's no shame in that loss. It was a fun fight. Beneil Dariush is just incredible with his grappling defense. Gamrot just couldn't get hands on him. But before that, he was on a 4-fight win streak. And I know a lot of people thought he lost to Arman Tsarukyan. I actually agree that Arman won that fight, but it was a close fight nonetheless. It was a competitive fight nonetheless, and we see where Arman is in the UFC lightweight rankings. So this matchup is just absolutely amazing, because Jalin Turner, even though in his last fight, he got a big win over Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell, he's taken an indefinite leave from the sport. And I thought Brad Riddell was his stiffest competition to date. But there is a massive difference, in my opinion, between Mateusz Gamrot and Brad Riddell. So this is a very tough test for Jalin Turner. I think, compared to the Dan Hooker fight, where I thought probably 75%, 80% chance that Jalin Turner would beat Dan Hooker. Now against Mateusz Gamrot, this is anybody's guess, honestly. And I'm going to give you an early prediction here in a minute, but Mateusz Gamrot is just incredible. The grappling is unbelievable. He has great submission skills. He has a lot to work on in terms of his striking, but still, he's looked so good in the fights he has been able to win. Even in the Arman Tsarukyan fight, where I thought he lost, he inevitably did win. Amazing fight, showed high-level grappling, showed high-level skills in general. The fight before that, he TKO'd Carlos Diego Ferreira, kneed him to the body and finished him. The fight before that, he absolutely mauled Jeremy Stephens and submitted him via Kimura in the first round. And Jalin Turner is kind of a similar guy where he goes out there and he's kind of a guy actually that really looks for the knockout and then finds a submission. In his last fight, he rocked Brad Riddell in the first round, then submitted him via guillotine at UFC 276 back in July of last year. So this is going to be a very intriguing fight. And I feel like both these guys, and I talk about this all the time, fighters I'm keeping my eye on. Both of these guys, every single time out, they seem drastically improved. And Jalin Turner, every single time he steps out there and has another fight, it seems like he's improved drastically. And I feel like the same for Mateusz Gamrot. I know he lost to Beneil Dariush, but Beneil Dariush is the elite of the elite in the lightweight division. There is no shame in that loss. But this fight's really going to come down to, can Jalin Turner defend the takedown against Mateusz Gamrot? Because we know what Mateusz Gamrot wants to do. He wants to go out there and take you down, ground and pound you, beat you up, and look for a submission. And Jalin Turner, while he has great submission skills, he has super long arms, but I don't think he's going to submit a guy the caliber of Mateusz Gamrot. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I think Jalin Turner's going to have to go out there. I think he's going to have to stuff the takedown of Mateusz Gamrot, and I think he's going to have to try to light him up on the feet. And I do favor Jalin Turner striking over Mateusz Gamrot striking. But I'm also curious, what is Jalin Turner's cardio going to look like? Because we've seen Gamrot go a hard 5 rounds against Sarukian. And I know this is only a 3-round fight. This is not a 5-round fight. But can Gamrot put the pace on Turner in a way that Turner's not used to, because he's never had a 5-round fight, at least not in the UFC. And I'm curious how his cardio is going to look, especially when he's constantly attempting to fend off takedowns. I think this is going to be a very intriguing fight. I think this is your typical grappler versus striker matchup. The only thing I don't like about this matchup, I'm happy that it's on UFC 285. Don't get me wrong. That card is going to be phenomenal. The main event, John Jones, Cyril Gane. Co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso. I don't know the rest of the bout order, but you got Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. You're going to have Bo Nickel on the card. You have Cody Garbrandt versus Trevin Jones on the card. This is going to be a phenomenal card. Derek Brunson versus Dricus du Plessis. But I hate to see Jalin Turner take on a massively, drastically different stylistic matchup on 2 weeks' notice. And honestly, the same for Mateusz Gamrot. He's going from, he didn't even have a fight scheduled, to now he's jumping in there with an absolute killer like Jalin Turner. So I'm curious how both these guys look in this fight. Was Gamrot training? Was he already in fight shape? It's going to be hard to say until we see him go out there. And at the same time, I feel like if Gamrot loses this fight, he's going to say, well, I took it on short notice. And he already has that built-in excuse. Not that I'm saying it isn't true, but at the same time, it kind of delegitimizes the win a little bit. So I just kind of wish, even though I'm happy it's on 285, I kind of wish that maybe they pushed it back a little bit and made this like a fight night main event. Like, why are we getting, Aaron Blanchfield, Jessica Andrade? We should be getting main events like Mateusz Gamrot, Jalin Turner. One of my favorite fight night main events from 2022 was Mateusz Gamrot versus Arman Sarukian. So I wish these were the type of fights, maybe, they said, okay, well, we don't want Jalin Turner to fight a totally different stylistic matchup when we're trying to build him as a contender. So we'll give him some more time. We'll push it back another 2-3 weeks. And that way they at least have a month and a half to train for each other. Because whoever wins this fight, there's going to be a little bit of an asterisk next to it. But nonetheless, it's going to be a massive fight. If Jalin Turner wins this fight, before, I believe Jalin Turner's sitting at number 10, and he was going to fight number 11, Dan Hooker. Now he's fighting number 7, Mateusz Gamrot. So if Jalin Turner wins this fight, he's 1 to 2 fights away from a potential lightweight title shot. How crazy is that? To be that close to a lightweight title shot in a stacked division. I know there's a lot going on. Is Volkanovski going to fight for the lightweight title again? You got Rafael Fiziev if he beats Justin Gaethje. You got Beneil Dariush, who's arguably already deserves a shot. You have some people talking about Dustin Poirier, which I think he has to fight a couple times if he wants to get another title shot. You got Conor McGregor's shadow looming out there if he beats Michael Chandler. Is the UFC just going to throw him into an Islam Makhachev matchup? But Jalin Turner, if he wins this fight over Gamrot, he's going to be in an amazing position. And for Gamrot, I know he's fighting down in the rankings, and shout out to Gamrot. There's very few people who'd be willing to take Jalin Turner on short notice, especially when he's ranked behind you. There's far too many guys saying, I don't want to take this fight. This guy's ranked behind me. Mateusz Gamrot did not have that mindset. He jumped on a plane. He's heading here, I believe, to get acclimatized. We'll see what happens, but there's very few guys that would be willing to take a Jalin Turner fight on short notice. And it's insanity because Jalin Turner has a 5-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage over Mateusz Gamrot. So this is going to be a very tricky style matchup for Mateusz Gamrot. But I think there's something to be said, even though he's fighting back in the rankings, there is a decent amount of hype behind Jalin Turner. And if Mateusz Gamrot can go out there and beat him, and let's say he goes out there and dominates him, he takes him down, just ragdolls him on the ground and beats him up and eventually finds a submission or just wins via, a dominant decision, I think it's going to propel Mateusz Gamrot into a massive fight in the lightweight division in his next fight. But I'm super interested in this matchup. I think it's a very compelling matchup. I think it's striker versus grappler. I think Jalin Turner has to keep it on the feet. And I think Mateusz Gamrot has to get the fight to the ground. Otherwise, he's going to lose on the feet to Jalin Turner. As far as an early prediction, this is a very tough fight to give an early prediction for. Because Gamrot, while he's had that tough test and he had that massive step up in competition against Beneil Dariush, he lost. And even against Arman Tsarukyan, who I believe is the elite of the elite as well, I believe he lost that fight as well. But Jalin Turner's a totally different style matchup than both those. He's taller, he's longer. Now, could I see him going out there and absolutely out-grappling Jalin Turner? I could. But I think Jalin Turner is so explosive on the feet. I can see him catching Mateusz Gamrot on the way in. So this is one of those fights, honestly, I may change my mind when I watch the tape and, when we get closer to the fight and I do my full breakdown and prediction. But I'm going Jalin Turner via TKO in this fight. I just think he's so explosive on the feet. I think he's so dynamic. I do worry about his grappling and his takedown defense a little bit, especially against an elite level grappler, the caliber of Mateusz Gamrot. But Gamrot's coming in on 2 weeks' notice. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. If this was a full camp Gamrot, my early prediction would probably be Gamrot. But the fact it's short notice, the fact that Jalin Turner has a massive height and reach advantage, I think Gamrot is going to have a tough time, closing the distance. I think the takedowns, even though they're very good once he gets a hold of you, closing that distance to get those takedowns, he's a little bit sloppy, and I think Turner's so long and so dynamic and so powerful and ever improving. I think Jalin Turner is going to get a massive win at UFC 285. I think he's going to go out there. I think he's going to be kind of careful to begin. I think he's going to try to maintain the distance. I think he's going to be pumping the jab. And I think Gamrot, as he starts to get more desperate for the takedown, we saw what Beneil Dariush did to him. When he started to get a little bit crazy, Beneil Dariush dropped him. And I don't know how Dariush didn't knock him out with that punch. That was one of the most cleanest shots I've ever seen. And I think Jalin Turner has very good knockout power. Of his 13 wins, 9 are by KO or TKO. And I just think Jalin Turner is going to go out there, be able to keep that range, and eventually find a kill shot as Mateusz Gamrot is looking for the takedown. But I think this is a very compelling fight. I think you have two very hot prospects within the lightweight division, and I'm very interested to see how this fight turns out. But no matter what, I don't think either guy is going to lose a whole lot of stock in this fight, especially considering it's short notice. So if Gamrot loses, I think he'll get a decent matchup in his next fight, and he'll probably be able to, hang around in that top 15 discussion. But if Jalin Turner goes out there and beats Gamrot, I think he propels himself, and he's 2 fights away from a potential lightweight title shot. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Who are you picking, Mateusz Gamrot or Jalin Turner? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you in the next video.